Ever since the late 90s, Alchemist has cemented himself as one of the most influential producers in hip-hop. He's worked with legends like Nas, Mobb Deep, Eminem, and he's also been going crazy with huge newer artists like Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, Freddie Gibbs, Larry June. The list goes on and on. And across all of his work, he's brought that classic hip-hop feeling. He's maintained his status as a super producer and a cornerstone of hip-hop for decades. So in today's video, we're gonna go in-depth making our own Alchemist-inspired beat and break down what it is about Alchemist's iconic production that keeps huge artists like Kendrick, J. Cole, and Freddie Gibbs coming back for beats time and time again, year after year. The Alchemist has been a heavy hitter in hip-hop since the late 90s. After gaining recognition for his work with people like Nas, Mobb Deep, Dilated Peoples, the list goes on and on, he pretty much cemented himself as a legend. But in today's video, I want to focus more on the newer stuff that he's been doing with artists like J. Cole, Kendrick, Freddie Gibbs, and all those guys. Alch says himself that he likes to start out his beats nowadays with the drums first, and then find a sample that fits onto those drums later.
Let me get a drum going, or like a pattern or some tempo, so that way I have like a starting point, and then as I'm mixing in records, it becomes more unpredictable.
So to start out our beat, we're gonna need a fire drum break. And instead of just dragging in a pre-made break, I wanted to make a break from scratch. So to get some inspiration, I found these records with that classic Alchemist hip-hop bounce. And as these songs are playing, try to listen to the similarities in the drum patterns.
Dear Adonis, I'm sorry that man is your father. Let me
like an addict. Took the high road on niggas, I'm riding over passes, nothing.
All of those breaks have some common themes in mind. A slow hi-hat, a dumb simple snare pattern, and a swung groovy kind of kick pattern. So that's exactly what we're gonna build with our drum break. But before we get in and start programming the drums, I wanted to mention that for a lot of these Alchemist beats, you do not want the drums to sound like they've been programmed in. You want it to feel like it's a sampled live drum break from an old record from the 70s, like these songs. The best way to build these live sounding drum breaks, in my opinion, without actually having a real drummer play them, is by using banks like Soulfy or Tempo by Teletone Audio. And by the way, this is not sponsored. Anyways, let's go into the screen and build out this break. So the first thing I did was open up Soulfy, and I grabbed this preset right here. And if we delete all of this, essentially all I did was add in a hi-hat pattern like this. We're just talking about the rhythm, right? Then you add in a snare. Super simple, right? And then you're gonna add in a kick right here, a double hit right here. And that is like the core rhythm that you're gonna want for these kind of beats. One thing that you can do to instantly add that like 90s hip hop kind of vibe is add in a kick hit right here, right? But that doesn't sound very 90s, right? That sounds kind of robotic. You want it to be like off time and like really quick, and then lower in velocity than that next kick. So it's like a little boom, boom. That might be just a tad too quick. So we just like move it a little bit, maybe just a little bit more. Right. That feels like a good pocket. And once you have this, obviously you're gonna want stuff to be at different velocities. So I might start taking some of these hi-hats, making them higher, some of them making them lower, just a little bit like that. And then maybe I'll have this snare right here like that, and this snare a little bit louder. Same thing with the kicks. I want this first kick to be a little loud, and then this one to be loud too. So not everything's hitting at the same volume. That's nice. And then you're gonna go in, and instead of just dragging all the hi-hats off time, this is like the most generic way to get like a swung hi-hat, but it's still a little predictable. You wanna go in and adjust every single one of them. These ones late, this one just a little late, this one early. This one I might want on time, with this one being late, this one on time, and this one really late. Right? Because then you start to get like this like swung human kind of feel. And then another thing you want to do is you want to add in little open hat hits. So, and you want to make sure that you get rid of the closed hi-hat whenever the open hi-hat plays. Because when you're actually playing real drums, you can't play an open hat and a closed hi-hat at the same time. Right? Nice. I sometimes like to alternate these to, there's two different hi-hat sounds. And that's pretty much it for the main pattern. So I essentially just built that out, adding little variations here and there. And then at the very end, I added this little part where the hi-hat stops. And once I had that, I liked the kick sound that I had from that bank, but I wanted some different hi-hats and snares. So I went and grabbed this kit that I made by myself by just adjusting all the settings inside of here. And when you mix the kick from that first kit with these hi-hats and snares, you get this. Now that we have a good pattern down, we want to focus on something key to the Alchemist drums: texture. Right now, even though it's live drum sounds, it still sounds pretty programmed. You can tell that it's been done with a sample bank. And the best way that I've personally found to make my drum breaks sound way more authentic is to put them through real hardware, like my 1978 reel-to-reel tape machine. And I also really like putting my drum breaks through my Space Echo tape delay pedal. So actually, the first thing that I did was I took this drum break that we just made and put it through the Space Echo pedal, and you get this. So essentially what I did to the drum break right there is I added a little saturation as well as the little subtle echo from that pedal. So what I do is I have this right here, right? The drum break that we just programmed in. I make sure to turn this knob up quite a bit so that the output is as loud as it can go without going into the red, because this essentially overdrives the audio and gives it that saturated hardware kind of sound without adding distortion plugins or anything like that. Then it goes through my patch bay all the way up here to my Space Echo pedal, and I just put a very subtle delay and then move the knobs like this every once in a while to make the delay more prevalent on snare hits. Next up, I put it through my reel-to-reel tape machine, because if you think about how those 70s records were made back in the day, all of the effects came before the tape, and the tape was the last thing that they actually recorded everything onto. So that's how we're gonna get the closest sound to an authentic record. Anyways, there's one key thing I do when I record to the tape, and I actually did it on the Space Echo as well, but I make sure to overdrive the volume of the drum break that's coming out of my computer so that it records onto the tape with a saturated, dirty kind of sound. And that's the first reason that I like to do it, because it gives it that like crunchy vintage kind of saturation when you do it with a tasteful amount of pushing the volume as much as you can. But the second thing that you wouldn't think about if you don't actually own a tape machine is the tape machine volume is always going to be at a certain level. And if I record the drums at a super quiet volume down here, the tape noise is going to be louder than that, even if I turn the volume up. So it's going to be hard to kind of mask that tape noise, and we want a little bit but not a ton of it. So I like to get it to the point where the drums are recorded louder than the noise, and then it's easier to kind of take that noise out without taking out those drums as well. Anyways, here's a before and after of putting the drum break through the tape. You could definitely emulate this by using plugins in the box, but I'll be real, it just does not give the same feeling as using the actual tape machine. However, there is one thing that we need to fix just a little bit. The tape hiss is still super loud on this, even though we turned the volume up super heavy recording onto the tape. So I like to take this Bruce V plugin by KXVI that takes out background noise. The last thing I did to sauce this break up just a little bit is I purposefully recorded it at 74 BPM, so a little bit faster than I wanted it to be, so that I could turn on this speed FX setting right here on flex time and then slow it down to 70 BPM, because that's going to give it a darker tone. So this is at 74 BPM. Just listen, not just to the speed, but the tone of the drums. It just has like a lower pitch, but in a natural way. It's not just pitch shifting it with a pitch shifter plugin. Just sounds more full and fat. And then finally, I did a little EQ, boosting the low end, taking out a little bit of these frequencies and boosting the high end just a little bit. And then also to make it sound a little bit more vintage, I went into the width and made it closer to mono than it originally was. So when it's 100% stereo, it sounds like this. And then at 50% stereo, you could probably only hear that with headphones on, but the little details add up. And once you add all that, you get this finished drum break. By the way, if you want a ton of these real sounding drum breaks that are perfect for these Alchemist beats, I have a ton of them in the vintage folder of my drum mastery kit, which is on Black Friday sale right now. It'll be the first link in the description down below. This drum mastery kit comes with so many other tools. One of my favorites being pre-mixed project templates that have all the sounds pre-mixed and pre-chosen out for you for a bunch of different genres and vibes of beats. And in fact, just to show you how easy it is, let me hop in the computer really quick and show you how fast you can cook up something with these templates. Okay, so I just opened up this vintage mastery folder. I'm gonna go into the project templates right here, FL Studio, and I'm gonna go to the soul template right here, open this up, and then as you can see, it's already gonna have a live hi-hat break in there, and it also has all of these sounds already pre-sound selected that go perfectly with that live hi-hat break, as well as all the sounds pre-leveled and mixed, so everything hits perfectly right out the gate. If I felt really lazy and didn't feel like programming anything myself, I could just drag in a kick MIDI, drag in a rim shot MIDI, throw in some crashes and rides, and you get this, which already sounds so sick. Just drag in a melody loop on top of that. Let's go with this one right here, 154 BPM. Chop out that little drum intro. It takes no effort. And if I wanted to add in the bass MIDI, I would just drag in the bass MIDI right here. And now we've got a bass as well. Like I said, that kit is on Black Friday sale right now, as well as every other kit that I've ever released is up to 80% off. So if you've been looking to level up your sound so you can produce legendary beats like the Alchemist, click that first link in the description to check out Drum Mastery and all the other kits that are up to 80% off right now. But anyways, let's get back into it. Now that we have the drum break finished, I grabbed a melody from inside the vintage folder of Drum Mastery. That works perfect for this Alchemist vibe, and it works really well with the drums. But instead of just dragging it in and ending the tutorial there, let's actually go in and show how I made that sample. When you listen to Alchemist's recent production, you can notice that a lot of his sample choices all have a similar feeling, which is really key to his sound. It's a lot of vintage jazz and soul records that have a darker tone. They still have a bit of soul to them, but they have this like chill, mysterious, luxurious kind of vibe to them. It's really nice. It's not really uplifting, super in-your-face soul samples like some of his older work. And one of the best instruments to get that luxurious, laid back, and jazzy kind of sound is a Rhodes, like the one you can hear on Kendrick's Fear. That Rhodes is so soulful, but not in a super in-your-face and overdone way. It's cool, calm, and collected, but it has just enough interesting stuff to just catch your ear. So that's what I wanted to go for. And I grabbed this UAD Electra 88 Keys VST, which is great for Rhodes. And I put down this chord progression that I'll break down in a second. So this chord progression might look a little intimidating when you're looking at it, but really all it is the same chords just played across multiple octaves so that it sounds more rich and full. So this right here is an F7 sus2 chord, which sounds wild, but really all it is this C minor chord right here. That's pretty normal. And then the bass note, instead of playing C across these two octaves, the bass note is lifted up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the way that I like to think about this chord. Feels nice and easy. So it's just C minor on top with an F in the bass. And you get this for the first chord. And then on this next chord, the bass note goes down 5 right here, and it goes down 7 right here, actually. I'm gonna be real, I have no idea what I did on this second chord, but I used a lot of close together notes to get this like dissonant, jazzy kind of sound, and then I spread them out across different octaves so that they're not all on top of each other, right? If I put all these notes down right there, you can see that they're really close, but it's really just these 4 notes just spread out 3 different octaves, 4 different octaves, and you get this luscious, nice second chord. Same kind of thing here with these super close notes. If we put this down right there, you can see that it's all the same notes, right? You can tell that's the same note, that's the same note. It's really only what, like five notes right there. Spread it out across a bunch of different octaves to get that big, luxurious kind of sound. And then I added in this ear candy right here. And all this is me just running down the scale in the pentatonic scale. So I'm just sliding my finger across the keyboard. And the way that I do this is I put the entire loop in the key of D sharp minor whenever I record this. So 1, 2, 3. And then if you look at this, all of these notes are only on black keys. So you can essentially just slide your fingers like this across the keyboard and it'll always sound good on those black notes. And then once you have that recorded, you can move everything back down to the original key that you had it in. An instrument that pairs super well with the Rhodes is an electric guitar. Just like the sample that Alchemist used on Ocean Sounds with Larry June and that Fear song that we just referenced with Kendrick. On both, you can hear the Rhodes playing these smooth chords and the guitar is just playing some nice ear candy on top.
What's up, family? Yeah, this your cousin Carl, man. Just giving you a call.
So I grabbed my electric guitar and started layering it with our chords and putting in some high note ear candy here and there, and we get this. Once I had that, I wanted to add some violins and strings to really bring that luxurious vibe to life. You can hear Alchemist using string samples on songs like $500 Ounces, Johnny P's Caddy, and Worst Comes to Worst.
Tend to talk forward, that shit mean a lot to me.
Yeah. Can't try.
And to get this authentic string sound, you 100% need them to be real. VST strings just don't cut it. Problem is, I don't play any violin. So what I did in this sample is I composed the melodies with a VST violin that sound like this. And then I sent it to a violinist to replay that on real violin. And once I got that recording back, I layered that back in with the VSTs that we had earlier just to make it sound as big as possible. And you get this for our finished strings. Now, most of the melodic ideas are done for this sample, but one thing that really helps make a sample sound authentic is texture. And Alchemist samples a ton of jazz records, so I thought that one thing that would be great for texture is adding these kind of jazz cymbals and rides every now and then in the loop. I didn't want to add in a drum break that had super busy hi-hats and snares and rolls and stuff, but more just a nice, chill crash and ride here and there, more for texture than anything. And to do this, I used the Abbey Road's 60s drummer contact bank and got this. Next up, to take that authentic texture to the next level, I added in some little wind chimes, vinyl noises, and then played in a simple live bass line on my bass, and you get this for the almost finished sample. But to really give it that authentic 70s vibe, we're going to do the same thing we did with the drum break and put it through the reel-to-reel tape machine to get this for the final sample. So now that we broke down that sample, let's bring that drum break and the melody together to finish off this beat. The first thing I did was pitch the sample down and stretch it to fit the BPM that I had the drum break at. And honestly, with just doing that, you could leave it as is and just let it ride out for the entire beat. But I wanted to spice it up a little bit. So the first thing I did is I added in 2 drum fills from Drum Mastery that I use super sparingly in the beat, just at the end of patterns for transitions and stuff like that. And once I had those down, the next thing I wanted to do to spice it up was by chopping up the drum break and the loop a little bit, similar to how the Alchemist does it in this clip.
And then do the...
Yeah. Just loop that, keep looping that.
All right, so I have 2 sections of this beat that I kind of chopped the sample a little bit other than just chopping out an 8-bar loop that I like. And the first one is this one right here, where we have this repetitive chop twice, and I chopped the drum break to follow that as well. I also ended up adding in an extra hi-hat break, which is just the hi-hat from this original break with the kick and the snare muted, just because I felt like I want the hi-hats to be a little bit louder. But listen to how the drum break is following exactly what this chop is doing. Right here, it cuts out. There's this little drum fill, and then it opens back up into the sample playing a little bit less choppy. And it does that 2 times for a nice little switch before we get into the next part that I chop. And And then this part right here, I really wanted a more repetitive chop. So that chop still is a little bit more musical, but this one, I wanted it to be like the same thing in a row 3 times. And then on the last time, there's a little variation, so it's not too boring. And then I also layered the sample with itself pitched up an octave on top of the original sample, just to make it feel more like a higher energy section. So you can tell that this is just chopping 1 chord. And then right here it resolves. So definitely a more choppy section right here. Finally, the last thing I did was purposely not add an 808 or a bass. On most of these Alchemist beats, there's no 808 or bass at all because he's letting the sample speak for itself. A lot of these samples have live bass lines already that sounds super good. And I think one thing that I love about the Alchemist production is it's not doing too much. It's just nice, soulful, the grooves are good, and it doesn't need a super thick bass to fill out the beat.
Don't be calling my motherfucker.
And one last thing I did to glue everything together is add my unreleased Tone Flex plugin on the master, using the saturation in the tape module to really just kind of dirty up the whole mix and kind of glue everything together so it sounds like it's all coming from the same exact tape machine. So as you can see right here, we have the distortion in the tape, and the tape is also having this like tape hiss that's going. And without the plugin, the beat sounds like this. Right? It's still good, but a little clean. This just dirties it up a little bit. Most of that is the distortion, but the tape is also filtering it a little bit. And then one thing that's really cool about this plugin is the tape instability. So if I turn this up all the way, you're gonna instantly hear it. The instability and the drift essentially create these little moments where it emulates a tape kind of fucking up, where the tape would like be recording and then all of a sudden speed up all of a sudden, or slow down, or skip a beat, stuff like that. Take a listen. Just wait for like this, it'll be this really big, right? So if you have that set to a more subtle setting, it just makes it sound a little bit more authentic, like it's like coming off an old cassette or something. And once I had that, the beat was 100% finished. But before I play it through, quick reminder that every single kit that I've ever released is up to 80% off right now for Black Friday. So if you like the melody in this beat and the drums, you're definitely going to want to check out that first link in the description down below. But anyways, let's hear this beat.